There's been a recent increase in interest in a video I made way back in September of 2023, which was my thoughts on Star Trek Continues. And I think the reason why this video has had a bump in views is probably because of the truly abysmal Star Trek Starfleet Academy series that's just been released. So people are likely seeking out fan films right now. So I would imagine that lots of fan films, including Star Trek Continues, are seeing a bump in views. People are seeking out something that feels authentic, right? Star Trek Continues felt very authentic. It looks like Star Trek. The characters speak like Star Trek characters. The stories and themes are consistent with the vision of Gene Roddenberry. So yeah, Star Trek Continues was a fan series released between 2013 and 2017. It was produced by Vic Mignogna, who also played a very Shatner-esque version of Captain Kirk. He did a fantastic job. He was very authentic. And that was the strength of that fan series. It strove to be credible, believable, a proper, faithful continuation of the original Star Trek series. Because as you know, the original Enterprise was supposed to have a 5-year mission. There were supposed to be 5 seasons of the original series, but the show got cancelled after only 3 years. So the producers of Star Trek Continues were trying to fill in the gaps. They were attempting to make those 4th and 5th seasons of Star Trek that we never got. And they did an unbelievably good job of capturing the look and feel of the show. Again, if you haven't seen Star Trek Continues, you are really missing out on something very special indeed. And I highly recommend you go over to their YouTube channel and watch those episodes. The lighting, cinematography, sound design, music, sets, they were identical to the original, and it felt like a show that was actually made in the 1960s. It was a perfect recreation of the original series. And above all, the acting, writing, and direction and production standards were of the utmost professional quality. The stories were strong, well-written, and thought-provoking. The show captured the essence and magic of Star Trek's themes, tone, and characters. It was clearly a labor of love by some very dedicated fans, and sometimes included some Star Trek alumni in front of and behind the cameras. In all, 11 episodes of the show were made. Obviously, as it was a fan film series, the producers and everyone involved, they couldn't make any money out of it. And the new Paramount fan film guidelines for Star Trek were introduced around that time. It was 2015, I believe. And the team felt that it was time to end the series with 11 episodes. Star Trek Continues is phenomenal, probably the best fan series ever made. Certainly the most true to the original series and the highest quality. I've covered a lot of fan films on this channel over the years, and there are some great ones out there. I don't want to name too many because if I start naming them, I'm going to leave some out, and then some people might get, a bit disappointed and a bit hurt by that, because some people who are involved in fan films do occasionally contact me. But I think Star Trek Continues was certainly a major benchmark of a lot of fan series, and that's why I wanted to focus specifically on that series in this video. So it's amazing to think that something made with such love and care by fans who volunteer their time and energy has made a much more positive impact on the fan base than some of the latest official Star Trek productions made under secret hideout. Star Trek Discovery, much like the Kelvin timeline movies, was designed to be a major reinterpretation of Star Trek. It was not just a reboot, but a visual reboot, which is why it no longer fits into the design continuity of classic Star Trek shows in terms of, uniforms, sets, ship designs, and so forth. That's why the Klingons looked like orcs. And there was also really inappropriate swearing on Star Trek Discovery, and yet more of that over on Star Trek Picard, actually. And Picard's first season was perhaps even darker than Discovery. Section 31 was about as far away from being Star Trek as you can possibly get. Just completely unrecognizable. Dreadful writing, completely joyless and pointless, visually hideous, Awful characters, just a painfully unwatchable TV movie. I suppose the only positive was that it was a TV movie and not a series. And that brings us to Star Trek Starfleet Academy, which is ultimately the nadir of Star Trek. But you know my thoughts on that show from my weekly episode reviews of that series. I've never been able to take Star Trek Strange New Worlds seriously. It just feels too self-aware and often bordering on parody at times. And although Lower Decks, an animated series, does get praised for having strong continuity referencing, it is something Star Trek should never be, in my opinion, which is a comedy. Yes, Star Trek has had funny episodes, it can do humour, but it is not a slapstick comedy. And how is it that despite all of the millions of dollars available to Secret Hideout, that they have been unable to produce recognisable Star Trek except for one season of Picard, which was the third season? And that was not without its problems, of course, because season 3 of Picard did inherit story issues from the first couple of seasons, like, for example, Picard being an android, which I just hated that. So how come fans working on shoestring budgets and working for free are able to make more faithful successors to Trek that satisfy fans than official Star Trek? It's almost as if Star Trek would be better off if it were run by actual proper Star Trek fans and not people who believe that Star Trek needs to be changed, fixed, or reimagined for modern audiences. I suppose it's also fitting that I would make this video now, what with the fact that the future of the Star Trek franchise is uncertain. This is the first time in about 10 years that there's been no new Star Trek in production. And I think that's a very good thing. Unless, of course, we get an announcement soon that Star Trek Starfleet Academy has been renewed. Because I think if it goes back into production again, I suspect 20 more episodes will be made. In the same way that seasons 1 and 2 were filmed back to back, which would technically give us 2 more seasons. And Alex Kurtzman had a plan for the show to run for 4 seasons, so it would be like 4 years of college, basically. But no such renewal announcement has been made thus far, so we'll have to wait and see. It's probably redundant of me to suggest that this franchise deserves to be retired at this point. I think that goes without saying. It's just not going to be. Hollywood has never been able to resist milking a long-running IP into the ground. And so, yeah, I suspect the Trek franchise will continue to boldly go on and on into ever-increasing irrelevance. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Dave Cullen Show channel. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell to be notified of future updates. Take care, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye-bye.